What the light showed me wasn't about the future. It was about how close we already are to losing it, and how quietly it's happening while no one is paying attention. I was 16 when I died. My name was Alexander Pierce, son of Marcus Pierce, the tech billionaire you've probably seen on magazine covers, shaking hands with presidents and CEOs. And on November 14, 2024, at 11:47 p.m., my heart stopped beating for 9 minutes and 42 seconds. But before I tell you what I saw beyond the veil, before I share the silent agenda that was revealed to me about 2026, I need you to do something. Close your eyes right now, take a deep breath, and whisper the word light. Just once. If something stirs inside you, if you feel a pull you can't explain, stay with me. Because what I'm about to tell you wasn't meant for everyone. It was meant for you. My father owned 17 homes across 4 continents. I grew up in a penthouse in Manhattan that overlooked Central Park, where the silence was always thick with expensive furniture and even more expensive expectations. The marble floors echoed when I walked alone at night, which was often, because wealth has a strange way of buying everything except presence. My mother left when I was 7. She said she felt like a ghost in her own life, and I understood that feeling more than I ever told anyone. The house smelled like imported leather and cold ambition. Every surface gleamed. Every painting on the wall cost more than most people make in a lifetime. But none of it felt like home. It felt like a museum where I was both the visitor and the exhibit. I went to Ashford Academy, a private school where senators sent their children and where your last name mattered more than your first. My best friend, if you could call him that, was Julian Hartwell. His father ran a pharmaceutical empire. We didn't talk about feelings or dreams. We talked about stock portfolios and summer homes in the Hamptons. I had everything a teenager could want. The latest phone. A black card with no limit. A driver who took me anywhere I asked. But I had this emptiness inside me that grew wider every single day. Like a canyon opening up beneath my ribs. I would lie awake at night in my king-sized bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was all there was. Wondering if money and power and influence were supposed to fill the hollow space where something else should have been. My father was always traveling. London, Tokyo, Dubai, São Paulo. Building his empire, expanding his reach. He called me once a week, usually on Sundays, and the conversations lasted exactly 4 minutes. He would ask about school. I would say fine. He would mention a new deal. I would say congratulations. Then silence. Then goodbye. I think he loved me in his own way, the way a man loves a rare painting he keeps locked in a vault. Precious but distant. Valuable but untouchable. I never blamed him. He was shaped by the same force that shaped me. The belief that accumulation equals worth. That influence equals meaning. That legacy is measured in dollars and dominance. There was a girl at school named Emma. She had brown eyes that looked like they held secrets, and a smile that appeared maybe once a week. She sat 2 rows ahead of me in advanced economics, and I watched the way sunlight caught her hair through the classroom windows. I never spoke to her. Not really. A few words here and there, polite, distant, safe, because beneath the expensive clothes and the confident posture, I was terrified. Terrified that if anyone looked too closely, they would see that I was empty. That I was a shell. That I had everything and nothing all at once. The night I died started like any other. My father was in Singapore. The housekeeper had left at 6. I was alone in the penthouse, sitting in the living room with floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the city like a painting. November in New York has this specific quality of cold that gets into your bones. The lights of the city stretched out endlessly. Millions of lives I would never know. Millions of stories I would never hear. I felt so small and so isolated in that moment, surrounded by luxury that meant nothing. I had scrolled through my phone for hours, social media, news, messages from people who wanted to be near my father's money. Nothing real, nothing true. Around 11 p.m. I decided to go to the rooftop terrace. We had this private access that only our penthouse could use, 37 floors above the street. The air was sharp and clean up there. The wind cut through my hoodie. The city hummed below like a living organism, indifferent to my existence. I walked to the edge where the glass barrier met the night sky and I looked down. I wasn't thinking about jumping. That's important for you to understand. I wasn't suicidal. I was just tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of carrying the weight of expectations I never asked for. Tired of the emptiness that money couldn't fill. What happened next happened fast. I heard a sound behind me. A mechanical grinding. The rooftop access door had malfunctioned before. Old building, expensive address, but old infrastructure. I turned to look, and that's when I felt my foot slip on the icy edge of the terrace floor. The glass barrier was lower than it should have been, some architectural flaw that had been grandfathered into the building codes. For a split second, I was airborne. The city tilted, the wind screamed in my ears, and then I understood with perfect clarity that I was falling. 37 floors, 370 feet, 4.5 seconds of descent. My mind didn't have time to be afraid. It just had time to notice. The lights blurring past. The cold air pressing against my face. The strange sensation of weightlessness. I hit the private garden courtyard behind the building. The impact was immediate and absolute. No slow fade, no dramatic goodbye. Just a moment of crushing force, and then darkness. My last thought wasn't profound. It was simple. It was just the word, "Oh." Like a quiet realization. Like opening a door you didn't know was there. And then nothing. Silence. Absence. The end of Alexander Pierce as I knew him. But it wasn't the end. The darkness lasted only a moment. And then, there was light. Not the light of a lamp or the sun. This was different. This was light that felt alive. Light that had weight and presence and intention. I became aware that I still existed, but differently. I had no body, or rather, I had a body made of something I didn't understand. I could see, but I had no eyes. I could think, but I had no brain. I was consciousness without container, awareness without anchor. The light surrounded me completely. It wasn't coming from a direction. It was everywhere and everything. And somehow, I knew I wasn't alone. The presence that filled that space was beyond description. It wasn't a person. It wasn't a being with form. It was more like an infinite intelligence. An ocean of knowing. An energy so vast and so loving that I immediately understood why every religion and every philosophy had tried and failed to capture it with words. The light pulsed with colors I had never seen before. Colors that don't exist in the physical spectrum. I felt no fear. Only recognition. Like coming home after being lost for lifetimes. The energy didn't speak with words at first. It communicated through feeling, through understanding that appeared fully formed in my consciousness. And the first thing I understood was this. I had been seen. Completely. Totally. Every moment of my 16 years. Every thought I had hidden. Every fear I had buried. Every small cruelty and every small kindness. Nothing was hidden here. Nothing could be. Then the light began to show me. Not tell me. Show me. I saw my life from outside myself. Like watching a film where I was both the actor and the audience. I saw myself at 7 years old, sitting in my bedroom after my mother left. Holding a toy car and trying not to cry because I had already learned that tears were weakness. I felt the energy's sadness for that little boy. Not pity. Sadness. The pure kind that comes from witnessing unnecessary pain. I saw myself at 12, watching my father give a speech about innovation and progress while I sat in the audience, invisible, wondering if he even remembered I was there. I saw myself at 15, lying to Julian about why I didn't want to go to a party, because I couldn't explain the panic that seized my chest in crowds. The loneliness I had carried was so visible from this perspective. So obvious. So painful. And the light wrapped around that pain like warm hands holding something broken. Then the energy shifted, the scenes changed, and I began to see things I hadn't witnessed. Things that hadn't happened yet. Things that were coming. The light showed me the world. Not all of it. Not every detail. But enough. I saw the year 2026 approaching like a wave. And within that wave, I saw the silent agenda that had been set in motion. I saw conference rooms in Geneva and London and Beijing, where men in expensive suits made decisions that would shape millions of lives. I saw technologies being developed in secret, artificial intelligence systems that could predict human behavior with terrifying accuracy, digital currencies that would replace freedom with control, social credit systems that would measure worth not by character, but by compliance. I saw the surveillance infrastructure already in place, waiting to be activated, cameras watching every street, algorithms analyzing every purchase, data points collected from every click, every search, every conversation. But here's what the light wanted me to understand. It wasn't showing me this to create fear. It was showing me this to wake me up. The agenda wasn't inevitable. The future wasn't fixed. The light pulsed with urgent love, and in that pulse, I understood something profound. The silent agenda only succeeds when souls remain asleep, when people trade freedom for comfort, when humanity forgets its divine nature and accepts the illusion of powerlessness. The energy showed me that 2026 would be a threshold year, a moment when choices would crystallize, when the direction of human civilization would fork, and every soul would have to decide which path to walk. I saw two timelines branching from that year. In one timeline, the agenda succeeded. I saw cities where every movement was tracked, where your access to food and medicine and travel depended on your compliance score, where artificial intelligence systems made decisions about human lives with cold efficiency, where the very concept of privacy had become ancient history, where children grew up never knowing what it meant to be unseen, where the human spirit slowly dimmed under the weight of constant observation and control. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't violent, it was quiet, systematic, normalized. A slow erosion of everything that made life worth living. And the most terrifying part was how easily people accepted it, how quickly they traded freedom for convenience, how willingly they handed over their power because they had forgotten they had any. But then the light showed me the other timeline, the one that was possible, the one that required awakening. I saw millions of souls beginning to remember who they really were, not consumers, not data points, not economic units, but divine sparks having a human experience. I saw communities forming around truth and love instead of fear and control. I saw technologies being used for liberation instead of limitation. I saw people choosing courage over comfort, standing for freedom even when it cost them something, refusing to participate in systems built on manipulation and control. The light showed me that this timeline wasn't guaranteed, but it was available. And it would manifest through the choices of ordinary people who decided to live consciously, to question authority, to trust their inner knowing, to prioritize soul over system. The energy held me in that space between timelines, and I felt its profound love for humanity. There was no judgment, no condemnation, just an infinite desire for us to wake up and remember our power. The light communicated something that changed everything for me. It showed me that I hadn't been born into wealth by accident, that my father's influence and resources weren't random, that my entire life, the very thing I had resented, was actually preparation. The light revealed that souls choose their circumstances before incarnating, that I had chosen this life of privilege and emptiness because my mission required it, because in 2026 and beyond, voices from within the system would matter. People who understood wealth and power from the inside but had awakened to something greater. The energy showed me that my death wasn't an accident either. It was a catalyst, a wake-up call. Not just for me, but through me. I wept without eyes. Tears made of light and understanding and grief for all the time I had spent feeling worthless when I had been preparing for something important all along. The energy wrapped tighter around me, and I felt a love so complete that it dissolved every wall I had ever built, every defense, every pretense, every mask. I was naked in the light, and it was the most beautiful thing I had ever experienced. I understood in that moment why humans fear this love. Because it demands everything. It asks you to let go of who you thought you were so you can become who you actually are. And that death of the false self is terrifying until you realize it's the only thing that leads to real life. The light began to show me more. Specific things. I saw Emma from my school, sitting in her bedroom 3 years from now, making a choice that would ripple across her entire life. The energy wanted her to know she wasn't alone. I saw Julian's father, the pharmaceutical executive, standing at a crossroads where profit and conscience collided. The light wanted him to choose differently. I saw my own father, sitting in an airport lounge in Frankfurt, staring at his phone, feeling the same emptiness I had felt. The energy wanted him to know that love was still possible, that connection was still available, that it wasn't too late. I saw thousands of faces I didn't know, millions of souls all connected in this vast web of light. And I understood that every choice mattered. Every moment of consciousness contributed to the collective awakening. Every act of courage created permission for others to be brave. Then the energy asked me something, not with words, with pure intention. It asked if I wanted to return, if I wanted to go back to the life of Alexander Pierce, knowing what I now knew, carrying this message, living this mission. The choice was mine, completely. No obligation, no pressure, just an invitation. And in that space of infinite love, I understood something crucial. Heaven wasn't a place you went when you died. Heaven was the state of consciousness I was experiencing right now. And hell wasn't a pit of fire. Hell was forgetting, living in separation, believing the lie that we are alone and powerless and insignificant. I could stay in this light forever, or I could return and try to help others remember. Both choices were valid. Both were honoring my soul's path. I chose to return, not because I had to, because I wanted to, because I understood that Earth wasn't a punishment. It was a classroom, a forge, a place where consciousness gets to experience itself through limitations so it can discover its own infinity. I said yes to the energy, yes to the mission, yes to carrying this impossible message into a world that might not believe me. And the moment I agreed, everything changed. The light contracted, the energy condensed, and I felt myself being pulled backward through a tunnel of sound and color and sensation. It wasn't pleasant. It was violent and disorienting, like being born in reverse. Consciousness cramming itself back into the tiny container of a human body. Pain. That was the first thing I felt. Extraordinary pain. Every cell screaming. My back broken in 6 places, my left arm shattered, ribs cracked, internal bleeding. But I was breathing. Somehow, impossibly, I was breathing. I heard voices, panicked, urgent, someone shouting about vitals, someone else calling for emergency response. I couldn't open my eyes yet, couldn't move. But I could hear, and I could feel, and I knew I was back. The impact had happened at 11:47 p.m. The paramedics found me at 11:53 p.m. 6 minutes alone in that courtyard, broken but alive. My heart had stopped during transport to the hospital. They used the defibrillator twice. 9 minutes and 42 seconds of clinical death. But I came back. Against probability. Against medical explanation. I came back. The weeks that followed were hard in ways I can't fully describe. Physical therapy. Surgeries. Pain that made me question my choice to return. My father flew back from Singapore immediately. He stayed. For the first time in my memory, he stayed. He sat by my hospital bed and held my hand and cried. Real tears. Unguarded. And I saw beneath his armor to the frightened man who had lost his own father at 22 and built an empire to prove he mattered. I saw his pain and his love and his terrible loneliness, and I forgave him. Not because he asked, because I understood. The light had shown me that judgment is just fear wearing a different mask, and I didn't want to be afraid anymore. I told him about the experience. Not all of it. Not the agenda or the timelines or the mission. Just the light. Just the love. Just the feeling of being seen completely and accepted totally. He listened. He didn't dismiss it. He didn't try to explain it away with brain chemistry or oxygen deprivation. He just listened. And when I finished, he said something I'll never forget. He said, "I've spent my whole life building monuments to my own fear. Maybe it's time to build something different." That was 3 months ago. He started divesting from some of his more questionable investments. Started asking different questions in board meetings. Started showing up. Not perfectly, but trying. And trying is enough. Emma visited me once I was home. She brought flowers and awkward silence, and then, finally, words. She said she had felt something shift in the universe the night I fell. Like a ripple had moved through everything. She said she had started paying attention differently after that. Noticing synchronicities. Following intuition. Questioning the narrative she'd been fed about what success means. We talked for 3 hours. Real conversation. The kind that leaves you feeling more yourself, not less. She told me about her own emptiness. Her own questions. Her own desperate hope that there was more to life than the script we'd been handed. And I told her what I could. That there was more. So much more. That we were more. That the light loved us beyond measure and was waiting for us to remember. I go back to school in January. I'm different now. Obviously different. I walk slower because my back still hurts. But I also walk slower because I notice things I never noticed before. The way light hits the windows in the morning. The sound of laughter in the hallways. The small moments of connection between souls who don't even realize they're connected. Julian asked me what happened up there. Not on the roof. In the light. I told him the truth. That I saw the future. That choices were coming. That 2026 would matter more than any of us realized. He didn't mock me. He got quiet. Thoughtful. And then he asked if there was anything he could do to prepare. I told him the same thing the light told me. Wake up. Stay conscious. Choose love over fear. Question everything. Trust yourself. Remember who you are. I don't know how to close this story except to tell you why I'm sharing it. The energy made it clear that this message wasn't just for me. It was for anyone who would listen. The silent agenda set for 2026 is real. The technologies exist. The systems are in place. The infrastructure is ready. But the future isn't written. We write it with our choices. Every day. Every moment. Every time we choose awareness over distraction. Every time we choose courage over comfort. Every time we remember that we are not small. We are not powerless. We are not separate. We are expressions of the same infinite light that held me in that space between death and life. And that light is counting on us. Not in a pressure way. In a trust way. It trusts that enough souls will wake up. Will remember. Will choose the timeline where freedom and love and truth prevail. You don't have to believe my story. You don't have to accept every detail. But I'm asking you to do one thing. Close your eyes again, right now. Take a breath. And ask yourself this question. What if it's true? What if you are more than you've been told? What if your choices matter more than you've been taught? What if the light is real, and it's waiting for you to remember? If something inside you responds to those questions, if something stirs and whispers yes, then you already know what to do. Stay awake. Pay attention. Trust the guidance that comes from within. And when 2026 arrives and choices crystallize, choose consciously. Choose bravely. Choose love. If this story reached your soul, write light below. Not for me, but to show that the light still speaks. Subscribe and stay in this journey, because the next story might be the one written for you. The energy told me that every person who hears this message and responds is part of the awakening. That your consciousness matters. That your awareness contributes to the collective shift. So write light if you feel it. And know that you're not alone. None of us are. We're all connected in the same infinite web. And together, we're stronger than any agenda. Together, we remember. Together, we rise.